that government is not the solution to anyone's problems. Government is the problem. All right, I wanted to discuss the growing wealth divide between homeowners versus renters in Canada. I will also touch on the BC NDP and BC Conservative approach to housing because they are diametrically opposed. Let's get into an issue that's impacting countless Canadians, the widening wealth divide between homeowners and renters. Recent findings from StatsCan reveal stark disparities, particularly among younger Canadians. This raises important questions about financial equity and the future of homeownership, not only in BC, but in our country. Before we get into this, I want to remind you guys, if you are looking for real estate help in Greater Vancouver, you can book a call with me right now using the link below in the description at a time that works best for you. All right, getting into this here, let's talk numbers. According to the latest Statistics Canada survey, homeowners under 35 boast a median net worth of around $457,000. In stark contrast, their renting peers sit at just $44,000, so that is over 10 times the difference. Now, when we look at older age groups nearing retirement, that gap widens even further. Homeowners in this demographic enjoy a net worth nearly 30 times greater than that of renters. And this disparity is not just a statistic, it reflects a broader trend that impacts people's lives. These figures highlight a critical trend here, which is that homeownership is becoming essential, always has been essential, but it's becoming even more essential for building wealth. And for many young Canadians, the pressure to break into the housing market is intense. The fear of remaining a renter looms large, and it's threatening their financial stability and their future. This is not just about owning property. It's about securing a place in a competitive economic landscape where wealth is increasingly tied to home ownership. As we explore the homeownership landscape, mortgage rates take center stage. Recently, we've seen rates drop from around 6% to the mid 4% range. This shift has reignited discussions about what rates are necessary to attract buyers. Now, according to Bank of Montreal economics, a mortgage rate of 3.9% or lower could significantly improve affordability, potentially revitalizing interest in the housing market. Historically, lower mortgage rates lead to increased buyer activity. If we can achieve that 3.9% rate alongside a 30-year amortization, Bank of Montreal says the mortgage payments as a percentage of household income could return to pre-pandemic levels. So this change would provide crucial relief for buyers who have felt sidelined in today's market, maybe allow them a better chance to invest in their future. But let's consider the flip side, because while lower mortgage rates might stimulate sales, they also risk driving housing prices higher. And an influx of buyers can and probably will intensify competition, pushing up prices and making home ownership even less attainable for newcomers, particularly younger Canadians. So this challenge means that as rates fall and demand rises, home ownership could slip further out of reach for those who are most eager to get into the market here. There's two directions, in my view, that we can take as a province to try and tackle this situation here. The first is the NDP and their government-centric, far-left socialist approach. The NDP's vision for housing revolves around a larger and more active role for government and nonprofit organizations. So a prime example is the Rental Protection Fund, which the NDP launched with a $500 million investment aimed at helping nonprofits, helping these housing providers acquire older apartment buildings. And this fund is intended to prevent these properties from being bought by large corporations, which often leads to rent hikes and evictions. So by facilitating the acquisition of these buildings by qualified nonprofits, the NDP aims to maintain them as affordable rental options. As of early 2024, the fund had already protected 33 buildings, keeping rents around 44% below the local market rate. So, of course, the NDP is touting this initiative as a success, arguing that preserving these existing rental units is a cost-effective strategy for maintaining affordability. My argument here, though, is that these buildings, most of them are now nearing the end of their economic life expectancy. Many of these buildings, they're very dilapidated. They lack modern safety systems. Brass tacks, they're held together, many of them, with duct tape and rubber cement. They really should have been torn down and redeveloped decades ago. So in addition to this protective measure, the NDP has also implemented policies to encourage denser housing developments. This includes requiring municipalities to allow for small-scale multi-unit housing in areas traditionally reserved for detached single-family homes. And by increasing the housing supply and promoting a diversity of housing types, the NDP believes it can make homeownership and renting more attainable for British Columbians. Density, here's my issue. You can zone for all the density that you want. If these projects are not profitable and they're not economically viable, they probably won't get built. And this is why housing starts have been falling off a cliff during a massive housing shortage. Normally, the free enterprise would be on a building boom here, and it's not, because they're scared shitless of the NDP. So it's a carrot versus stick approach. The NDP are pretty well all stick. The NDP seem to want to force investors and developers to build the homes, take on all the risk without really, as far as I can tell, any profit motive. So the NDP waged war on investors and the development industry. They're hammering us with taxes and regulations. They've capped annual rent increases, so investors can't raise these rents to cover costs. It's an incredibly hostile business environment that we have in BC. So my question, of course, is who is going to build the homes? And if you ask our current NDP Premier, David Eby, he seems to think that the government will build the homes. And that's why he's been partnering with the First Nation to build these below market homes. But of course, the fine print here is that they're 99-year leases. The government or the First Nations retains control of the land. You don't own the home. It's basically a glorified rental. Now, in stark contrast, the BC Conservatives advocate for a more market-driven approach to housing, which is what I've been advocating here for years. John Rustad has criticized the NDP's initiatives as overly bureaucratic and inhibiting to the private sector. The Conservatives argue that the key to addressing the housing crisis lies in significantly unleashing the private sector rather than expanding government intervention. And this is in alignment with Pierre Poilievre's policies that he's announced here. He's talked a lot about this. He plans on eliminating the GST on new construction homes over $1 million. The Conservatives favor basically deregulating the housing market, arguing that the NDP's policies create barriers to private development. Rustad has expressed skepticism about the efficacy of the Rental Protection Fund, and I share that skepticism, suggesting that it competes with private sector interests and does not address the urgent need for more rental units. Instead, he argues for a more collaborative approach with municipalities to promote denser zoning, but insists that the final decision should rest with the local government. So in my view, the Conservatives are less stick, more carrot. They want to work with the private sector to get these homes built. And in my view, that will be far more effective because the free market enterprise system is just far more efficient than government at allocating capital. Moreover, Rustad has promised to repeal the NDP's restrictions on short-term rentals, positioning this as a matter of local governance and private property rights. And I agree, it's expropriation of property rights, and it's wrong. He contends that these regulations stifle economic activity and limit the availability of housing. The Conservatives believe that by reducing government oversight, the market will naturally adjust and lead to more affordable housing options. And this has been my position since the very beginning. I've been telling you guys that government is not the solution to anyone's problems. Government is the problem. You have to get the government out of the way so that we can get homes built and get shovels in the ground. Last point, and I want to be clear on this. If you're waiting for the government, any government, to help bail you out and get you into the housing market in BC, you're going to be very disappointed here, because regardless who's steering the ship, if it's the NDP, the Conservatives, the Greens, if we have the Liberals or the Conservatives in the federal government, it doesn't matter. If you want to get into a home in the Lower Mainland, it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be entirely on your shoulders. Don't count on any government to help you in any way. In fact, you want to be as free from the government as possible, and you really want to take your destiny into your own hands. Thanks for watching. I'm Jay Coupar. Remember to click that green icon if you want to book a 15-minute Zoom consultation with me, and I'll see you in the next video.